Today's reflection by Scott Stoner is entitled "The Courage to Let Go," and it begins with a quote from Raymond Lindquist. Raymond says, "Courage is the power to let go of the familiar." We are now more than halfway through our Lenten journey. Our weekly themes so far have focused on the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to grow, and the courage to change direction. This week, we will offer a series of reflections on a theme that has been implicit in each of the previous themes: the courage to let go. It takes courage to let go of what is familiar ways of doing things, as well as letting go of familiar lenses through which we view the world, ones that may not fully reflect the lens through which God views the world. In the gospel reading for yesterday, the fourth Sunday in Lent, we hear the story of Jesus healing a man who has been blind since birth. The story opens with the disciples asking Jesus, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" The disciples are simply viewing sin through the familiar lens at that time, that illness was always the direct result of sin. Anna Curry wrote in yesterday's reflection, "Over the course of history, it has been the nature of humans to treat those with disease, disability, or infirmity as unclean or less than in the sight of society. Unless we are aware of this lens through which we view others, or even ourselves, and more importantly, unless we are willing to let go of it, we risk not being able to fully embrace the dignity of each and every person as a child of God, regardless of their current state of health or ability." Let's make it personal. What is your reaction to the quote from Raymond Lindquist, "Courage is the power to let go of the familiar"? What is your response to Anna Curry's thought about how the lens through which people have typically viewed people with illness or disabilities? Can you think of a time when you had the courage to let go of something you were doing, or a particular way of thinking that you came to believe was hurting yourself or others? I'll be honest, I like the familiar. I like the comfortable. There's something to be said for routine. Sometimes we continue to do things the way we have always done them because we found that it works, until, of course, it doesn't anymore. And just because something is familiar or comfortable or safe doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be discarded, until, of course, it does. This is where discernment comes in. From time to time, we need to examine the way we do things, the ways we look at things, and decide whether or not they are serving us and others well. They may have at one time, but do they still? Have times changed? Or have we? Or do we perhaps know better than we did before? If the familiar no longer serves us well, if it no longer serves God or God's people well, then it's time to let go. And sometimes that takes courage. May God continue to bless your Lenten journey and bring you with joy to the Easter feast.